The person you love had a private conversation about you with someone. And I need to know what they said right now. My beloved child. Someone you care about more than you admit just had a private conversation about you, and the words spoken in that quiet moment were never meant to reach your ears. It happened away from the noise, away from curious eyes, in a place where honest feelings could no longer hide behind careful smiles. At first, it sounded like an ordinary conversation. Then one unexpected question changed everything. The person across from them leaned in and asked, "Are you finally going to tell the truth about how you really feel?" A long silence followed. Not because there was nothing to say, but because the answer carried more weight than anyone expected. Don't skip. What happened next may explain why their recent behavior suddenly feels so different. They looked down, took a slow breath, and began revealing thoughts they had kept locked away for far too long. But before they finished, the listener interrupted with a warning that made the entire conversation take a surprising turn. The listener wasn't interested in excuses. They wanted clarity. If this person means so much to you, they asked, why have you been acting as though they don't? That question landed harder than anyone in the room anticipated. For several seconds, there was only silence before the person you love admitted something deeply personal. They confessed that every important decision lately had somehow been connected to you, even when it didn't appear that way from the outside. They spoke about moments they replay over and over, words they wish they had said differently, and opportunities they fear may never come again. Yet just as it seemed they were finally ready to reveal everything, another name entered the conversation. A name you wouldn't expect. The listener mentioned someone who had quietly been watching the situation unfold, someone who believed a misunderstanding had grown far bigger than either of you realized. Stay till the end, because that unexpected detail changes the meaning of everything you've heard so far. What happened after that is where the conversation became impossible to ignore. The listener asked one final question. If you had one chance to speak honestly today, without fear or pride, what would you say? This time there was no hesitation. The person you love answered immediately, but their exact words remained unheard because someone unexpectedly approached, forcing both of them to stop talking. They exchanged one serious look before agreeing that the rest of the conversation would have to wait until the right moment. Yet before they walked away, the listener quietly smiled and whispered, "I think they're closer to discovering the truth than you realize." Those words left the person you love completely speechless. They didn't deny it. They didn't argue. They simply nodded, as though a difficult decision had finally been made. And what they planned to do next could change the direction of this story in a way nobody saw coming. Something huge is waiting for you, because the next conversation won't happen in private, it will involve you directly. The next morning carried a strange sense of urgency. Nothing looked different on the surface, yet the person you love couldn't stop thinking about the promise they had quietly made before walking away from that private conversation. Every ordinary moment felt heavier than usual, as if time itself was waiting for a single decision. They reached for their phone more than once, typed a message, erased it, and stared at the blank screen. Why was something so simple suddenly so difficult? The listener's words kept echoing in their mind, "If you wait much longer, someone else will decide your future for you." That sentence unsettled them because deep inside, they knew it wasn't just a warning, it was becoming reality. Don't skip. The next clue explains why hesitation was no longer an option. Later that day, the same trusted listener met them again, but this time the conversation was shorter and far more direct. Without wasting a single moment, they asked, "Have you noticed what's changing?" The person you love looked confused until they were handed something unexpected, a simple photograph taken weeks earlier. At first glance it seemed meaningless, but after looking closer, they realized it captured a moment they had completely overlooked. In the background was someone quietly watching the two of you from a distance. That person noticed everything before either of you did, the listener explained. Suddenly, forgotten conversations, missed opportunities, and strange coincidences began fitting together like pieces of a puzzle. Something huge had been unfolding behind the scenes, and neither of you had recognized it until now. But why had nobody spoken up sooner? As the afternoon faded into evening, the person you love finally admitted what they had been afraid to say out loud. "I've been protecting myself from rejection," they confessed, "but all I've really done is create more distance." The listener didn't respond immediately. Instead, they smiled with quiet understanding before revealing one final piece of information. "You're not the only one carrying unanswered questions," they said. "The person you're thinking about has been searching for the truth too." Those words changed everything. For the first time in a long while, fear began giving way to hope. Yet just as they gathered the courage to take the first real step forward, an unexpected message arrived that neither of them had anticipated. The name on the screen made the room fall silent, and what it contained would force a choice that could no longer be postponed. The message appeared at the worst possible moment. They stared at the screen without moving, reading the same sentence again and again as though it might change if they looked long enough. The listener noticed the sudden shift in their expression and quietly asked, "Who is it?" Instead of answering, the person you love slowly locked the phone and slipped it into their pocket. That silence revealed more than any explanation could. The message wasn't filled with anger or demands. It contained only a simple request. "Before you make another decision, we need to talk." But who had sent it, and why now, just as they had finally decided to stop hiding? Stay till the end, because what happened after that conversation request exposed emotions that had been buried for far too long. They agreed to meet before sunset, choosing a quiet place where interruptions would be unlikely. As they waited, memories they had spent months trying to ignore returned one after another. Every missed opportunity. Every unfinished conversation. Every moment when fear had spoken louder than honesty. Then the other person finally arrived. There was no dramatic entrance, no raised voices, only an unexpected calm that made everything feel even more important. After a few quiet moments, the visitor said something that immediately caught them off guard. "I've been hearing things about you," they admitted, "but I refuse to believe any of them until I spoke with you myself." Those words lifted a weight they hadn't even realized they were carrying. For the first time, they understood that not every rumor had been accepted as truth. Yet the visitor wasn't finished. They had one final question that no one else had dared to ask. The air grew still as the visitor leaned forward and quietly asked, "When you speak about them, why do your eyes always change?" The person you love couldn't answer right away. Their silence wasn't uncertainty. It was emotion they could no longer control. A faint smile appeared before they finally whispered, "Because every plan I make somehow leads back to them." The visitor looked genuinely surprised, not because of the answer itself, but because of the honesty behind it. They nodded slowly and replied, "Then you should know something. They've been waiting for a sign far longer than you realize." Those words echoed long after the conversation ended. As the person you love walked away, they reached into their pocket once more, unlocked their phone, and opened a draft message addressed to you. Their thumb hovered over the send button, but just before they pressed it, something unexpected appeared on the screen that changed everything again. A single notification interrupted everything. It wasn't the message itself that caught their attention, it was the name attached to it. For a brief moment, they froze, wondering whether this was coincidence or something much bigger. The draft meant for you remained open, unfinished, while the new notification quietly waited to be read. They hesitated because they already sensed it contained information capable of changing the direction of every decision they had made over the last few weeks. Don't skip. The next few moments revealed why the private conversation about you had been far more important than anyone first realized. With a deep breath, they opened the notification. It was from the same trusted listener who had challenged them to stop hiding their feelings. The message was short but impossible to ignore. "I spoke with someone else after we left, and they confirmed what I suspected." Their heartbeat quickened. Confirmed what? Without wasting another second, they called the listener. The answer came almost immediately. "The way you talk about them," the listener explained, "is completely different from the way you speak about anyone else. You may not realize it, but everyone who truly knows you can hear it in your voice." Those words struck with unexpected force. Until that moment, they believed their emotions had remained invisible. Instead, they discovered they had been quietly revealing the truth all along. Something huge was waiting just beyond this realization, but one final piece was still missing. As the call ended, they looked once more at the message prepared for you. This time, they didn't delete it. They didn't rewrite it. Instead, they added one final sentence that hadn't been there before. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't perfect. It was simply honest. Before they could press send, however, another memory surfaced from that first private conversation, the listener's final warning: "Don't tell them everything until you understand what they've been trying to tell you without words." That single reminder made them pause again. What silent sign had they overlooked? What truth about you had been sitting in plain sight the entire time? The answer was closer than ever, and once they uncovered it, there would be no turning back. The answer didn't arrive through another message. It came through a memory they had ignored for far too long. As they sat alone, replaying every conversation in their mind, one small moment suddenly stood out. It had seemed insignificant at the time. A brief pause, a quiet smile, a sentence left unfinished. But now it carried an entirely different meaning. They realized you had been saying something important without ever speaking the words directly. The listener had been right. The truth wasn't hidden because it was complicated. It was hidden because neither of you had been looking in the right direction. Stay till the end, because the realization that followed changed the way they understood every moment between you. Without waiting another minute, they returned to the trusted listener and shared what they had remembered. The listener listened carefully before asking one simple question. If you knew there was nothing to fear, what would you do today? This time there was no long silence. No uncertainty. The person you love answered with complete confidence. I'd stop protecting my pride and start protecting what truly matters. The listener smiled, almost as if they had been waiting to hear those exact words. Then they revealed something unexpected. During that private conversation about you, there had been one sentence they intentionally kept to themselves because they believed the timing wasn't right. Now, they quietly repeated it, the strongest feelings are rarely the loudest. They're the ones people spend the most time trying to hide. Hearing those words felt like someone had finally unlocked a door that had been closed for months. As evening settled in, they picked up their phone once again. This time, there was no deleting, no hesitation, and no second-guessing. The message to you was complete, and their fingers slowly moved toward the send button. Just before they pressed it, another notification appeared, not from the listener, but from someone who had witnessed part of that original private conversation from a distance. The message contained only one sentence. Before you send anything, there's one detail you still don't know, and it changes everything they really meant when they spoke about you. Their hands stopped instantly. What hidden detail had remained untold from the very beginning? The answer was finally within reach, but once it was revealed, neither of your lives would be quite the same again. An uneasy feeling settled over them as they opened the new message. They expected another opinion, another warning, or another piece of advice. Instead, they found a single sentence that immediately demanded their full attention. You only heard what was said after the conversation began. You never heard how it actually started. Everything stopped. Until that moment, they had believed they understood the private discussion about you. But what if the very first words had changed the meaning of everything that followed? Don't skip. The beginning of that conversation had remained hidden for a reason, and uncovering it would explain emotions that had never been spoken aloud. Determined to learn the truth, they agreed to meet the person who had quietly witnessed those opening moments. There was no exaggeration in their voice, only careful honesty. Before anyone mentioned your name, they explained, the person you love was already thinking about you. That detail alone was enough to leave them speechless. The witness continued, someone asked whether they were finally ready to move on, and without even pausing, they answered, I keep telling myself to move on, but every path somehow leads me back to them. No one expected such an immediate confession. The room had fallen silent because the sincerity in those words couldn't be questioned. Then the witness revealed something even more surprising. After saying that, the person you love reached into their pocket and unfolded a small note they had been carrying for days, a note connected to you that no one else had ever seen. The witness couldn't read every word on that folded note, but they remembered one line with perfect clarity because it had been spoken out loud before it was carefully tucked away again. When the time is right, the person you love whispered, they deserve to hear this from me, not from anyone else. Suddenly, every hesitation, every unfinished message, and every delayed decision made complete sense. They hadn't been avoiding the truth. They had been waiting for the courage to deliver it themselves. Yet as the witness stood to leave, they paused at the door and turned back with one final revelation. There's still one sentence from that conversation that nobody has repeated, they said quietly. The person you love asked me never to share it. Unless the moment became impossible to ignore. And judging by everything that had happened since, that moment was finally beginning to arrive. The silence after those words felt almost unbearable. The witness had reached the door, paused with a hand on the handle, and looked back one last time. I promised I would protect that final sentence, they said softly, because it wasn't spoken carelessly. It came from the deepest place in their heart. The person you love lowered their eyes, already sensing what was about to happen. Every unanswered question, every delayed message, every moment of hesitation had led to this point. Something huge was waiting for you, but the witness refused to rush. Before I repeat it, they continued, you need to understand the emotion behind those words. Otherwise, you'll hear the sentence, but you'll completely miss its meaning. The witness took a slow breath and returned to the beginning of that unforgettable moment. After everyone stopped talking, they explained, the room became so quiet that you could hear nothing except their breathing. No one pressured them. No one interrupted. They simply looked out the window for several seconds before saying something none of us expected. The witness smiled faintly as the memory came back. They admitted they were tired of pretending that you were just another chapter in their life. They said every attempt to forget you only made them realize how deeply you had become part of their future. No one in that room laughed. No one questioned those words. Instead, every person present understood they were witnessing a truth that had been hidden for far too long. Stay till the end, because what they said immediately afterward was the one sentence they begged everyone to keep secret. The witness finally spoke the beginning of that protected sentence, but stopped before revealing the ending. They looked directly at me and quietly said, if I ever get one real chance to stand in front of them again. The witness fell silent, remembering the promise they had made not to reveal the rest unless the time was right. Then they looked at the person you love with complete certainty. I believe that time has finally arrived, they whispered. At that exact moment, the phone on the table began to ring. It wasn't the trusted listener. It wasn't the witness. It was a call from someone neither of them expected, someone who claimed to know exactly how that unfinished sentence ended, and why hearing it now could change everything between you forever.